They're scheduled to come and talk to us about some things. So first, since this is a Tea Party event, we always start the Tea Party events with prayer, so we're going to do that. Lord, we thank you for this time we can come together. We thank you that we still live in a country that is free enough to call on your name without fear of too much harm or retribution. We wish it were better, Lord, and we come together and we try to make things better. And Lord, we ask for more time, Father, to spread your word and to elect people who will do your will. In the name of Yeshua, amen.
Amen.
Now our first speaker today will be Miss Heather Grant. She was a candidate in the Republican primary for United States Senate from North Carolina. Who's recording and where would you like her to stand? Here.
You need me right here? Is this good? All right. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
It is so good to be here with you guys today. I'm excited. I have had the pleasure of kind of traveling this morning, so I'm happy to be here with Vince and Senator Lee. And, you know, I've talked a lot about this as I've traveled since the primary. When I first got into the race, I did not agree 100% with Thom Tillis. I still don't agree 100% with Thom Tillis, but that's okay. Because my husband will tell you I don't agree 100% with him either, so we get along pretty good. We're married 18 years now? Yeah, God, 18 years. So I haven't kicked him out yet, so we're doing good. So what I want you to think about as you're talking to people, because you guys are here so y'all have voted, you're going out and doing things, you're working the polls, you're making the phone calls, but what I want you to think about as you go out and talk to people is, number one, who do you agree with 100% of the time? Nobody. Not 100% of every single day of your life have you ever agreed with one person. And that's important, because what we have to realize is that our friends and family we don't agree with. You can't agree with your candidate 100% of the time, but we have two people on the ballot that are very distinctly different. One, I guarantee you will agree with at least 80% of the time. The other one, I'd say you probably don't agree with 1% of the time. So it's easy to talk about where you're going to cast that ballot and talk to people about where they need to cast their ballot. Because here's my thing. Reagan said 80-20. I took it a step farther and will always take it a step farther. If I can get you to agree with me 51% of the time, I will step up and be your friend for that 51% of the time. And on the 49%, we're going to stand across each other and we are going to duke it out to get what I need. But where we stand together, we're going to stand together. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how we get things done. That is why you have people like Congressman Hudson, who can do what he's been able to do. Virginia Fox, who's made the gains she's made. That's how Mike Lee, and he will tell you, Senator Lee, I apologize for using your name and not tagging you with Senator. Sorry,
sir. My name, use it all the time.
He will tell you that there are times that you have to work with the people that you don't always agree with, because there are times, believe it or not, they're going to agree with you. And this is what this election is about. We have taken 100 years to get to where we are. And this fundamental change that has happened in these last two presidency cycles has to end. And the only way it ends is if we realize we must work together where we agree to disagree where we can't, and understand that because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I hate you. But it does mean that I will stand opposite side of you when we do disagree. And so right now we are 7 days, 6 days? Oh gosh, are we 5? Lord, I'm losing my countdown. We have 5 days left, ladies and gentlemen, to motivate people to vote, to get out the vote. And I don't mean just talk to the people that you like and you know, talk to anybody who will listen to you about this election and talk to them about voting and where they need to place their vote, because our conservative candidates are the only chance we've got to begin to take back this country. And unfortunately, we don't have 100 years to start making that turnaround. We have to start in 2014, which will continue into 2016, 2018, and 2020. We've got to stop looking short term, look future and long term, and plan like we are going to leave something for our children and grandchildren. Otherwise, we will end up right back where we are. So I just want to say thank you for being here. I want to say thank you for supporting your candidates. I want to say thank you for getting out and motivating others to vote. And thank you for the time that you're giving all of us to come speak with you today and carrying our messages forward to everybody you talk to from now until you stop voting, which hopefully will be the day they put you 6 feet under or in your little mausoleum and you're not going to come back to vote after that. So without further ado, I would like to turn it back over to Will and say thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right, guys, now this one is a little harder. The 12th district, as you know. Anybody here not know about the 12th district? Maybe Senator Lee doesn't know about the 12th district. He's not from here. But the 12th district is created as a consistent liberal Democrat district, plain and simple. The freedom to create our own congressional districts was taken away from us by federal courts. And so we have districts like the 12th as a result of that. So anyway, there's a man that's been willing to step up and run against these impossible odds. What is the 12th now? 67% Democrat? 64% Democrat? But anyway, this guy's been willing to step up to the plate and put 100% in. He's not a token candidate at all. He has been 100% in from the get-go. I want to introduce my friend, Mr. Vince Coakley.
Thanks so much, Will. I so appreciate the opportunity to come and speak. And first and foremost, I just want to thank everybody here. As I look at faces in the room, most of you are familiar. I've seen you over and over again, and one of the reasons for that is you're working hard nonstop. You're canvassing, you're making phone calls, and doing all the groundwork that makes a candidacy like mine very possible. So I want to thank you so much for that. I want to share a little bit about what I'm doing and why, and share some good news about the traction we believe that we're getting. When I set out to do this at the beginning of the year, I explained that I have a real strong sense of calling about this. I don't do this because I can look on a piece of paper and I can see numbers and think, wow, this is something that we can calculate our way to victory. No, I looked at this first and foremost. I feel a sense of calling, that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I also feel like along the way, and I could tell many stories about how God's favor has been upon this particular contest, the doors that have opened, the relationships that we've developed along the way with people of both parties who have been very supportive of my campaign, and the people who, I'll tell you a funny story. One of the first fundraising calls I made was a business guy in Charlotte. I called him up and I said, hey, here's what I'm looking to do. And there's a pause in the phone, and he said, so you really think you can win this 12th district? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, I think you're smoking dope. But 10 seconds later, he said, but I want to support you anyway. And the next week, I was sitting down in his office, and he handed me one of my first contributions. That's the kind of thing that's happened throughout this campaign. And why is it happening? It's happening because one of the things that I've been passionate about is that we cannot leave anybody behind. I believe that we need to expand the family of freedom. You see, we've been watching, especially in the black community, we've been watching policies that have been destructive for the black community, helped destroy the black family for the last 50 years. I tell people all the time, this isn't about 2-year, 4-year, 6-year election cycles. This is about 50 years of bad policies that have destroyed the black family and have led to economic ruin. There are stories in the Charlotte Observer a few weeks ago about how poverty is spreading to even very nice neighborhoods in the city. Right here in Rowan County, I was with a group of people a few days ago talking about East Spencer. There are areas like High Point that are struggling, and they've been struggling for quite some time. But the past 5-6 years, under hope and change, we've got even more of what we've had before, which is economic downturn. So I believe there are people out there, and this has been affirmed by my candidacy, there are people out there hungering for real change. They're not looking for handouts. They're not looking for scraps. They're not looking for little silly ideas like raising the minimum wage. They want 21st century jobs. That's what they're looking for. Opportunities to feed their families, and be empowered. And that's what this campaign's about. It's about empowering people. I had a woman who recently changed her registration. She sent me an email, and she had questions for me. So I got her phone number. We had a conversation last night. She recently switched from Democrat to Independent. At the end of the conversation, she said, "You absolutely have my vote." Because I've come to see that the things that we've been doing as black people all of these years, they're not working. See, I think there's a hunger out there. There's a desire out there for real substantive change. And I think we can provide that message for them. I want to tell you briefly as well about some of the traction that we're getting. TJ, who is working very hard on the ground in Charlotte, we are constantly having conversations with Democrats who are supportive of my candidacy. A lot of what is impacting people in the Charlotte area, especially, people are familiar with me from television. And I don't know how many people have just said, "You know what, I don't care what your party affiliation is, I just trust you." And isn't that one of the best affirmations that you can possibly get? So I'm very optimistic. I believe we've got a lot of good traction, and I'm excited about the story that's developing toward election night. So I want to leave you with this thought. One of the things that's happened with this district, unfortunately, is this is a district that's been written off. These are people, these are human beings that the Democrat Party has taken for granted and assumed that they're going to vote Democrat no matter what. They don't care about them specifically. They're voting units. That's how they see them. They're voting units. And I dare to come along and say, here's an alternative. That's what I wanted to do, is provide an alternative so they can actually make a real choice. And there are a lot of people ready to make that choice. At the same time, let's be honest. We as a party have not been very aggressive in reaching across racial lines like we should. This is an opportunity, not just for this district, but if we do this, this sends a message across the country that nobody has a monopoly on human beings and their votes. And I think that's very important, that we break through that barrier. This can be something that starts a movement across this country to advance self-sufficiency and prosperity. And that's what this message is about. So again, I want to thank you for coming out today. I want to thank you for all the hard work. I want to appeal to you to keep digging, keep plugging these next few days, and hopefully we will have a set, not just one, but a set of victories on election night. Thank you, everybody, and God bless you. Thank you.
All right, everybody realizes we've got a few problems, especially in the United States Senate. Everybody agree with that? Okay. Well, one man who is not a problem in the United States Senate, a guy who has stood up for fiscal conservatives over and over. He stood up for our only ally in the Middle East, the people of Israel. And he stands up for gun owners and all things conservative. Just an all-around good guy, Senator Mike Lee from Utah.
It's wonderful to be with you. The only hard part about it is it's really hard to follow Vince Coakley. Listen, I hear a lot of speeches from a lot of politicians. It's been a long time since I've heard one that inspired me more than that one. You, sir, need to be in the United States Congress. Let's help him get there. I'm very pleased to be here to help support the campaigns of Thom Tillis, running for the United States Senate, and Vince Coakley, running for the United States House. These are two very, very important races. Let me talk about each of them in turn for a moment. Thom Tillis. He's running to serve in an entity that calls itself the world's greatest deliberative body. Now, how many in here are inclined to agree with that description of the Senate right now? I'll be the last to agree with that description right now. Now, the Senate, under its own rules, is supposed to be the world's greatest deliberative body. It's different from every other lawmaking body in the world in that every member has the right, under our rules, to offer up amendments, to try to improve legislation before we get to a final vote. But under the current management, under Harry Reid's leadership, we don't have that right. It's been stripped of us time and time and time again until we've gotten to the point where we almost don't pass anything. We almost don't vote anymore. You'll see us voting sometimes on TV, but it's usually on some nomination that they know is going to get through anyway because of the nuclear option. Harry Reid has shut down the amendment process. This is affecting not just Republicans, but Democrats too. My colleague, a guy named Mark Begich, who's a senator from Alaska, he's been there 6 years. 6 years. You want to know how many votes he's gotten, roll call votes on the Senate floor on amendments he's introduced? Not one. Not a single one in 6 years. This is the kind of Senate that Harry Reid is running. Now, he does this by using a procedure known as tree filling. The Senate Majority Leader has the prerogative of filling the tree, and filling the tree means he's stopping amendments. Democrats are fond of pointing out that Republican majority leaders have in the past filled the tree. It's true. Doesn't mean they should have. But more importantly, it ignores the fact that Harry Reid has filled the tree more times than every other majority leader in the history of the United States Senate combined. This is a new kind of gridlock. This is not your standard garden variety Democrat versus Republican, liberal versus conservative dynamic. This is a new kind of gridlock from a leadership of a party that wants to do nothing, that wants literally for nothing to happen. They've been in nothing mode ever since Republicans swept into majority status in the House after the 2010 elections. We've got to turn that around, and we need Thom Tillis to do that. Now, I was talking to my wife on the phone last night. My wife follows the polls very carefully, especially in the races where I've gotten involved. She told me that it's an absolute razor-thin margin. 43-43, dead tie. And that means it's going to be close, and it means we have to win. And it means we have to be the ones who show up. I hope everyone in this room will show up and vote. Looks like some of you already have. I see this sticker. I'm here to invite you to vote not just once, but 10 times.
Don't be saying that now.
And I want to be clear. I'm not asking you to commit any voter fraud, not to violate any laws. That's not our way. I'm sure that's not the way you do it in North Carolina. It's not how we do it in Utah. It's certainly not how we do it as Republicans. The way we vote 10 times is that we vote, then we go find 10 of our friends, and we get them to vote. And as we're driving them to the polling location, as sometimes we have to do, we talk to them. And we talk to them about who they're going to vote for. I'm here to ask you, we're going to talk about Vince in a minute, but I'm here to ask you first, talk them into voting for Thom Tillis. And also to talk them into voting for Vince. I'm going to talk more about Vince here in a second. Get 10 people to do that. And for extra points, see if you can get 10 people who will agree to do the same 10. It's like Amway, but with elections instead of small business. Now, I know there was a tough primary here. And by the way, I just have to respect and commend Heather. Heather and I have appeared together at several events today for Thom Tillis. This is a true patriot. And let's give her a big round of applause. First of all, the fact that she was willing to run for the United States Senate is itself saying something. She saw a problem, a big series of problems, an unending series of problems in Washington. She was willing to put her name out there, throw her hat into the ring, and for that alone I commend her. But I also commend you, Heather, for the fact that after the primary was over, you got behind Thom Tillis. And that's what we need to do. We're not always going to agree all the time. I like to repeat a story sometimes that I heard told by a guy named Emo Phillips. He's a comedian, who's big back in the 80s. I don't know what happened to him, but he used to tell a story of when he was walking across the Golden Gate Bridge one night. It was late. He was enjoying a peaceful evening. He was the only one on the bridge. And he said it was great because there were no cars going anywhere. I was just taking in the moonbeams and thinking about life. He said, I got halfway across the bridge and discovered I was not alone. There was another guy on the bridge. I didn't see him before because he was standing on the edge of the bridge, outside the guardrail. You know what that means? He said, I'm going to have to intervene. Convince this guy that whatever his problems are, it's not worth ending his life over. So he said, I I stopped and talked to the man. The first thing I could think of was to ask him, do you believe in God? The man said, yes. I said, me too. Are you a Christian? Yes, me too. What denomination? I'm a Baptist. Oh, me too. Are you a Northern Baptist or a Southern Baptist? I'm a Northern Baptist. Me too. Are you a Northern Fundamentalist Baptist or a Northern Reformed Baptist? Well, the man said, I'm a Northern Reformed Baptist. Me too. Are you a Northern Fundamentalist Baptist Conference of 1857 or a Northern Fundamentalist Baptist Conference of 1812? And he said, I'm a Northern Fundamentalist Baptist Conference of 1857. And I said, die, you heretic, and I pushed him off the bridge. Well, I'm here to ask you to join me in the cause of deciding that we as conservatives are going to be far more about finding and embracing converts than about identifying and casting off heretics. We're not always going to agree on everything, just as Heather said, but there is a huge difference, regardless of where you fit within the political ideology of the Republican Party. Huge difference, a world of difference, between Thom Tillis, who stands with us as a Republican, and as a Republican believes in constitutionally limited government, believes that Washington, D.C. is not the answer, believes and understands that problems have occurred as we've taken more and more power that belongs to you, the people, taken it away from the people, and away from the legislative bodies that are closest to them, and taken it to Washington, D.C. He'll stand with us and help rebuild our economic opportunity society, where poor Americans are being trapped in poverty by bad government policy. Middle-class Americans are being put in a position of insecurity by bad government policy. And we're at the top of the economic ladder. Those who have climbed to the highest rungs are pulling up the ladder from behind them with the assistance of government, making it harder for those on the lower rungs to climb. We as Republicans, we as conservatives, know how to restore economic opportunity to America. We as conservatives understand that the best way to help the poor and the middle class is to implement conservative policy, because it's liberal policies which have had a nice long run. But it's those policies that are holding our poor and our middle class down, preventing them from climbing that economic ladder. Thom Tillis will help us restore the greatness of our country. Vince, I think I'm going to cry if he doesn't get elected, because this man is too good. It's not every day that somebody with this amount of talent, this amount of passion, and this amount of genuine, unvarnished, sincere devotion to the conservative cause comes along. Amen. Ships don't pass this way that often, not ships Amen. Like this one, and we need it. Please, please help send Vince. He's destined, I'm convinced, to be a real superstar, not just in North Carolina, but in our country, and in the cause of restoring constitutionally limited government. He understands not just that we need to be conservative, not just why we need to be conservative, but he's got an unusual ability to explain to people that we are conservative not in spite of, but because of our compassion. We are conservative not in spite of the poor and the middle class and their needs, but because of it. He can help explain that, as we've seen today, better than any member of Congress that I can think of. And we need him here. So please join me in this cause, and I want to thank you, because I know that you all are the ones doing the heavy lifting, you or the people who are moving the movement. And it's only through good men and women like you who love this country and want to promote the principles that have made this country great that we're able to succeed. I look forward this coming Tuesday calling you and to calling Thom Tillis to issue a party congratulations on an election well won. Thank you very much. Thank you. Want me to answer some questions? You can ask me about anything you want, about Congress or politics or Harry Reid or fashion, gardening, relationships. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Dr. Ada Fisher. I'm the National Committee woman on my way to the gym. I am very interested in a race in Utah.
Yes, ma'am.
Mia Love, since if she gets elected, she'll be the first black Republican female elected to the Congress. How's she doing?
She's doing really well. Mia is a seasoned candidate who came to us as the mayor of Saratoga Springs, Utah. Ran a really good race last time around. Ran up against a 12-term incumbent Democrat named Jim Matheson, the only Democrat in Utah who could ever hope to hold a seat that long. And he somehow managed to beat her just very, very narrowly. Well, she came back even better, even stronger, even more polished than she was before. Jim Matheson, meanwhile, decided not to run again. It's not over yet, but Leah's going to win. Now, she's taken a beating from her Democratic opponent, and I was proud to stand in Leah's defense last week, along with the other Republican members of our congressional delegation, and support her, and strongly condemn the unfair treatment that she's received. But Leah's going to be a fantastic member of Congress, and I look forward to working with her. Yeah.
We passed the marriage amendment in 2012. It's recently overturned by a federal judge. What can we do about these federal judges that are out of control?
We passed a similar marriage amendment in 2004. We amended our state constitution and did, I think, exactly the same thing North Carolina did. It defined marriage as an institution between a man and a woman. We, of course, didn't define it that way. It's what marriage is. It's what marriage always has been. Now, it is the prerogative of a state to make those decisions. If a state wants to abandon that, it may do so through its elected officials, through whatever lawmaking process a state has in place. What's not okay is for unelected judges to go in and change that law based on their own policy preferences in the absence of any constitutional command prohibiting a state from making that decision. Sadly, that's what happened. Now, I'm a lifelong watcher of the Supreme Court. It's an odd hobby of mine. Maybe you could say it's a bad habit, but I've watched the Supreme Court. I fully expected that the Supreme Court would grant review in your case that came up through the Fourth Circuit, and Utah's case that came up through the 10th Circuit, and was absolutely shocked when the Supreme Court denied review. There are those who hope that the Supreme Court still might take up this issue in another case and still might stand behind the right of the states to do that. I fear that that's not going to happen, and that shocked as I was that the court denied review in these cases, it's a signal that the court's not going to step in. I'm honestly not sure what can be done about that at this point, because short of a federal constitutional amendment, making clear what I think is already clear from the text of the Constitution, that a state has the right to do that. There's no way of undoing that unless the Supreme Court decides to take it up, which I don't think is going to happen. I think the odds of a federal constitutional amendment making clear that the state has the right to do that has very, very long odds, odds of the longest sort. What we can do, and I think what we have to start doing right away, is to protect religious freedom in light of this change in our law. I'm the sponsor of the Marriage and Religious Freedom Act in the Senate. The corresponding legislation is running in the House. The sponsor there is Congressman Raul Labrador. And what it says is that no agency of the federal government may retaliate against any individual or entity based on a religious belief that marriage is between a man and a woman. We want to make sure that the federal government doesn't engage in the type of activity that we've seen where sometimes local government entities will swoop in and try to pull somebody's business license because they believe in traditional marriage. I've got a lot of co-sponsors, all Republicans at this point. I'm still trying to add some Democrats. We need to pass legislation like that. I think it's the best we can do right now.